These people are all designers. How many of you are designers? Raise your hand. That's a lot. If you're thinking about raising your hand, if you're a developer, if you do UI, UX, and I still don't understand what the hell the difference is between all of those things, if you do anything that makes a website or an app exist, you are a designer. Stand up. I want to see you. Stand up. I want you all to give yourself a big round of applause. Because I love all of you, and I think you should love each other. And I'm about to make you feel really bad about what you do. And then I'll make you feel good again, and everything will be all right. My name is MikeMonteiro, and I am a designer. And along with my partner, Erica Hall, we run a web design studio in San Francisco called Mule Design. And I became a designer for the same reason that I'm guessing most of you became designers. Because we enjoy making things. We enjoy creating. We enjoy bringing new things into the world. And that's really cool because yesterday something didn't exist and today it does. And it's because we made it. We helped it to be alive. And we're responsible for that. And that's a pretty cool thing to do with your life. And I'd always wanted to earn my living being a designer. Unfortunately, I was a terrible employee. And I got fired a lot because I loved to argue with the people who were willing to pay me to be a designer. So in order to keep creating things, I ended up having to create a company that would hire me. So then this act of creation, of making things, had to be coupled with this act of running a business, which I quickly realized I was not very good at or enjoyed very much. So my partner and I, we had to learn about this stuff. We had to learn how to run a business and handle clients as we went. And at the same time that we were doing that, my view of what design was also expanded because now that we got to run our own business, we also got to choose what we were going to work on. And we saw a lot of stuff that we didn't want to work on, and for the first time, we were able to say no to that. Because I wanted to be very careful about what was going out into the world with my name on it. And I began to see design not just as an act of creation, but more as an act of choosing what to create. And along the way, we made a lot of mistakes, and we learned from them. And after a decade of being in business for myself, I'd made enough mistakes to fill a book. So I did, and it's about things like getting clients, charging for your work, how to present your work, how to get paid, how to protect yourself. And people tell me that it made them a lot better at their jobs, which is nice to hear. Has anybody here read it? All right, I love all of you. And there's room in my heart to love the rest of you, too. Unfortunately, some people also told me that they were giving this book directly to their clients, which I wasn't crazy about. You can't put that on a client. Design is your job, not theirs. And if you're not going to look out for your own self-interest, why would you expect somebody else to? I wrote this to help you figure out how to do your job better, not to have someone else do it for you. But that made me realize that I'd left maybe half of the equation unfinished, because we can't do this job without clients. And maybe they'd appreciate a handbook on how to be a good client. So I made you another thing. This is the handbook for clients that you've been waiting for. This is the one that you buy by the box. This is the one that you can give to your clients. This is the one that tells them what they can do to ensure the success of a project and also tells them how to make sure that you are doing the same. And it comes out September 30th at the end of this month, and I hope you find it helpful. Back to this guy for the time being. What this book is really about is responsibility. Designers taking more responsibility for their careers. And there was something I touched on in the book just a little bit that I want to elaborate on today. And that's your responsibility not only to yourself and to your clients, but to the wider world. We are designers because we love to create. But creation without responsibility breeds destruction. And that's what we're going to talk about. And it starts with a story, as most things do. A story that was in the Wall Street Journal just over a year ago. This is Bobby Duncan. And at the time this story was written, Bobby was 23 years old and a freshman at the University of Texas at Austin. And like most 23-year-olds, hell, like most of the people in this room, Bobby uses Facebook. She also likes to sing and play the piano, so that when she got to college, one of the first things she wanted to do was join a chorus group. Oh, and Bobby's also a lesbian, by the way. And the chorus group that she ended up joining was the Queer Chorus at UT Austin, which, like many other organizations, has a Facebook group page, as you can see here, which is run by the chorus's president, who is understandably proud of his group, as he should be. And when Bobby joined the chorus, he routinely added her to the chorus's Facebook page, because that's how he communicated with members of the chorus about events, rehearsals, and that's how he communicated with people who might want to see the chorus perform. Here's the other thing that we should know about Bobby. For reasons that are absolutely her own business, she hadn't come out to her parents yet. And she carefully managed her Facebook privacy settings to make sure that she had built a wall around what her parents could see and what her parents couldn't see. And I'll reiterate, the reasons for this are her own business. Now, if any of you have ever waded into Facebook's privacy settings, you know what an absolute nightmare they are. They're divided into categories, and each category is divided into a subcategory, and nobody knows what any of this shit actually does. And the worst part is they have a history of changing all of this on the fly and opting you into all sorts of stuff you didn't even know was there. Here's what happened to Bobby. When the chorus president created the chorus Facebook group, he made it open. Because, in his words, I was so gung-ho about the chorus being unabashedly loud and proud, as he should have been. This isn't a secret organization. This is a place where kids go to sing. Now, unbeknownst to him, Facebook had made 3 very important design decisions. That anyone beside you can add you to a group. They don't need your permission. They don't even need to know who you actually are. Number 2, when someone adds you to a group, it goes up on your wall for all of your friends to see. And more importantly, number 3, and here's the kicker, the group settings override your own privacy settings. They haven't changed this, by the way. The settings that Bobby had worked so carefully to set for herself. So a third party, the chorus president, without any malice on his part whatsoever, inadvertently notified all of Bobby's followers that she was part of the Queer Chorus at UT Austin, a kids' singing group, including her father, who, according to the Wall Street Journal, left vitriolic messages on her phone demanding she renounce same-sex relationships and threatening to sever family ties. And he posted this to his own Facebook page 2 days later. A Facebook page that Bobby had helped him to set up, by the way. Bobby, being a 23-year-old, was understandably devastated. She had made a very careful decision about how to handle her life. She had thought it through. She did the work of setting it up, and it was completely undermined by a careless design decision. Of course, this was all over a year ago, and Facebook has learned its lesson. They've actually simplified their settings. Just this October, they did away with a search setting that let you opt out of being returned in public searches. Their reasoning? Less than 10% of their users opted to use it. Now, Facebook claims to have over 1 billion users, 1.4 billion actually, at last check, but that math is a little too complex for me. You know what 10% of 1 billion is? That's 100 million people. Now, to be fair, they did say it was less than 10%. So maybe it was 9%, or 8%, or 7%. Let me know when this number gets comfortable for you. Let's take it all the way down to 1%. That's the smallest possible percent they could have meant. And that's still 10 million people. With one fell swoop, Facebook changed the privacy settings for tens of millions of people, and you can bet there were some Bobby Duncans in there. But it's cool. Facebook cares about your privacy. Let me show you another example. Facebook graph search, where I can do fun things like search for Islamic men interested in other men who live in Tehran, and also find out where they work. Well, what the fuck could go wrong here? This is irresponsible design. And you may be thinking, oh, no, this is a business decision, Mike. Bullshit. It may have started life as a business decision, but to get on the interface, to go live, to go where people can interact with it, it goes through design. And when a designer lets a bad business decision through, that's a decision as well, and a decision which you now own. Facebook's reply to what happened to Bobby was, our hearts go out to these young people. Their unfortunate experience reminds us that we must continue our work to empower and educate users about our robust privacy controls. In other words, we're sorry that our clusterfuck of settings and our general disregard to your privacy destroyed our family. But it's not your fault. It's not our fault. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I was raised Catholic. And when there was fault on the table, nobody got up until it had been assigned to somebody. So whose fault was it? Because Facebook's privacy settings don't just happen, they're a decision. They're designed to work that way. And at the heart of this, there is design, and hopefully, there's a designer. Sadly, design happens regardless of whether there's a designer present or not. But too often, it happens in the presence of a designer who either doesn't see the problem, or worse, sees it but will not speak up. And I imagine they weren't designed by one person. I imagine it took a team of people, very smart people, one would think. After all, you don't get to design privacy settings for an organization with 1.4 billion users unless you're pretty smart, I would hope. And I have to think that at some point along the line, one of those smart people might have had a hunch that what they were designing was too complex, too hard to understand, a violation of privacy, and possibly even unethical, because yes, I do think shit like this is unethical. And as soon as one of those very smart people noticed the problem, one of three things could have happened. Number one, they ignored it. They saw something that was badly designed and potentially harmful. Something that if you just walk through a few use cases, you realize can easily result in someone's privacy being violated. And they didn't speak up. Perhaps they were afraid to get fired. Perhaps the culture they work in isn't one where designers speak up. And you're probably thinking, holy shit, what irresponsible assholes. But I'm guessing many of you in this room, myself included, have probably been at the point in a project where we are so tired, and so exhausted, and so ready to be done that we just think this is probably good enough. Number two, let's say they did the right thing. Let's say they ran it up the chain. They followed chain of command and entrusted the person above them to take care of it. Because in a well-run organization, and I have to believe that an organization with 1.4 billion users is well-run, or God help us all, we can rely on the person above us to listen to our concerns and to make allowances for us to fix them. Unless, of course, the person above them ignored it. We spot a problem, we bring it to the larger group so it can be fixed because we want to make it better, and we're told we got to ship. Either a deadline's coming, or we're already over budget, or the fix would put us over budget, or someone's bonus depends on a deadline being met. And we're told it's not that big a problem. It's not a showstopper. We just send out a patch later. In other words, someone says, fuck it. Someone higher up says, fuck it. Someone higher up tells somebody else to say, fuck it. By the way, this is the one that you take a photo of and put on Instagram so that your boss knows what Berman was doing with you for the last couple days. This is how bad design makes it out into the world, not due to malicious intent, because I don't think they had a malicious intent. It goes out with no intention whatsoever. It goes out through carelessness. And as we saw from Bobby, bad design can have severe real-world repercussions. No one intends to approve bad design, but by the time a design gets through the entire approval process, sometimes enough people just want to be finished or are afraid of the repercussions of pointing out something that's wrong that everyone might just agree that it's good enough. And good enoughs, taken all together, are not very good at all. And yes, those privacy settings are a nightmare, but I don't want to turn this into a case study for a single bad user interface. What I want to focus on for the next 40 minutes, or however, is why. Why we approach the job like we do, why we take on the projects we take on, and why we give up so easily. I want us to talk about our responsibility as designers, and I want us to understand the cost of what happens when we make shit. We are all familiar with these scenarios. We come across them every day. We see things going out the door that we're dissatisfied with or don't work properly, don't conform to best practices, or worst of all, they violate the trust that our users have in us. And some of us try to keep these things from happening, and some of us don't. We may see it as somebody else's job. We hope that somebody else might show up in time to fix it. And we get upset when they don't. Who in your organization can pull the plug on something that sucks? The answer, of course, is you. The answer has always been you. There ain't no cavalry. There's nobody else responsible for doing your job but you. And we are mired in a design culture that either doesn't understand its responsibility to the world we live in, or worse, doesn't care. Design is nothing more or nothing less than human beings' attempt to explain and manipulate and hopefully better our environment. Design is not just how something looks or feels or even how it works. Most importantly to us today, design is how something affects. How it affects an individual, a class of people, and ultimately the environment we live in. And when designers disregard the effect that that manipulation has on the environment, they are at best, negligible, at worst, culpable. And when design is practiced without forethought to consequences, without responsibility, what we get is not that creation that we love so much. What we get is destruction. Which reminds me of this tongue twister of a quote. And you'll pardon me, but it was written by a scientist, and they can be a little long-winded. Basically, it says, make it first. We'll figure out the repercussions later. Just ship it. Looks cool. We'll throw a bunch of people in a room, and eventually something interesting will happen. And then we'll figure out what to do with it. This is how most of Silicon Valley works, by the way. We throw a lot of money at the same people time after time and hope that they make something happen. After all, it's worked so fucking well for us in the past. We need to fear the consequences of our work more than we fear the consequences of speaking up. We need to fear the consequences of our work more than we love the cleverness of our own ideas. And when the fear of taking responsibility and the fear of getting in trouble is greater than the fear of causing harm, we stop becoming designers. We become agents of recklessness. When we create without thinking, we become deaf. That's my dad. No, I'm kidding. I just didn't want to bum you guys out too much. This is Victor Papanek. Is anyone familiar with him? Okay. That's not surprising because he was blacklisted and shunned by this industry for writing a book. Victor was a designer, an educator, and an author. He was one of the first advocates of socially and ecologically responsible design, way before the design community was ready to talk about any of this stuff. And Victor, bless his heart, Victor hated bad design. And he didn't take too kindly to the designers who made it either. Victor believed that designers had an ethical responsibility to design things that were beneficial to the world and to design them well. And more importantly, that we have an ethical responsibility to not design things that we do not want in the world. In Victor Papanek's eyes, we are not pixel pushers, we are not code monkeys, we are gatekeepers. And in 1971, Victor published Design for the Real World, which I encourage you all to read. This book has shaped how I think about design more than anything I've ever read in my life. And it's safe to say that if I hadn't read it, I probably wouldn't be up here talking to you about this today. And in it, he describes a design community that's in total disarray and in service to rampant consumerism, and he gives it the smack upside the head it needed. This is the very first sentence of the preface. There are professions more harmful than industrial design, but only a very few of them. And I have no doubt that if Victor were writing this book today with the proliferation of the web on society, he'd eliminate the word industrial from that sentence for being too limiting. I cannot think of a more exciting way to open a design book. He goes on to say, before, if a person liked killing people, he had to become a general, purchase a coal mine, or else study nuclear physics. Today, design has put murder on a mass production basis. And mind you, we haven't even turned the page yet. The design community was not pleased. He was blacklisted, scorned, and shunned by the very people that he was trying to elevate. But the thing is, Victor was right. Taking responsibility is not a nice-to-have design skill. Responsibility is not a luxury you get to tack on later after you've built up your portfolio or made a name for yourself. This is not something that you allocate a small percentage of your time to. Responsibility is core to what we do. You are responsible for the work you put into the world, and you are responsible for the effects that work has upon the world, whether you are a physicist, a banker, or a web designer. Because today's web is in our phones, our cars, it's in our schools, it's in our traffic lights. We can use the web to control our home security systems, to keep an eye on our children, to monitor whatever medicine our elderly parents might be taking, and to keep an eye on whatever terribly subversive things we might be doing in our public parks. And as Bobby Duncan can attest, the web is in our closest and most intimate relationships. Cerebro exists. And we can hold it in our hands. And whether we end up calling it Facebook Graph Search or something else, we will have designed it. We will have built it, and we will be responsible for its existence. And while we may build things with the best of intentions, we also live in a world where bad guys are billionaires who dine with the president, and the good guys get hunted down by the U.S. Department of Justice. And as the web expands, its reach into our lives, we need to completely understand the responsibility that we hold at our fingertips. Anything that is this pervasive, when handled irresponsibly, carries with it the power to destroy us all. And we, designers, the people who stood up earlier, the people I love, we stand in the doorway of what is possible to build and not build. What comes to the web goes through us. And we can either ignore the consequences of what we choose to design, or we can say, no, that is bad design, that is irresponsible, that is not going through me. We focus so much on what we can do, we forget to ask about what we should or shouldn't do. But in the end, the monsters we unleash into the world will be named after us. But I'm not here to bum you out. I'm not. I want you to feel good about what you can do. I love what I do. I love being a designer. And I want you to love being a designer, because the more that you understand the power that you have as a designer, the more of it there is to love. Responsibility isn't some burden that you have to carry. It's your potential to fulfill as a designer, your potential to create rather than destroy, your potential to move humankind forward. So I'm going to tell you about our 4 fundamental responsibilities as a designer. That's it. Number 1, you have a responsibility to the world we live in. This is not a choice. This is the job. Design works in the service of the better world. Design is, by definition, solving problems. And the world is so blessedly full of problems right now that we've got a lot of job security ahead of us. So ask yourself, are the problems that we're taking on worth solving? Do we need 36 more iPhone docks? Do we need 59 more iPad cases? What about 179 more camera apps? Hey, and here's this year's winner of TechCrunch Disrupt, Alfred. It's a butler for rich techies. Uber for servants. This is an app where you can hire someone to manage your other apps. The snake has eaten its own fucking tail. And what problem is this solving, other than a stockholder confidence problem, when the only problems you are tackling revolve shareholder value? Just fucking stop. This is not design, this is a circle jerk. Oh, and don't even get me started on shit like this. I honestly cannot imagine doing less with the time you have on Earth. This is the world as we are designing it. This is the world as designed by us, and make no mistake about it, it is working exactly as designed. We have more processing power, more affordable tools, and more combined intelligence right this very minute than at any point in human history. And we are using it to build the most obscene income disparity this country has ever seen. Swipe left to fuck the world. Too many smart people are deciding what problems to tackle, what problems to put their energy into, not based on whether those products solve worthy problems or improve someone's life, but rather on whether they can be funded and flipped. But let me ask you this, if we only ever tackle the issues that Facebook, Twitter, Amazon, and Google are interested in acquiring, then when the hell do we start tackling the ones they're not? Making rich people richer is not disruption, it's the same old bullshit. And the further we get from solving problems of real people out in the actual world, real people whose daily needs are getting their kids educated, getting proper nutrition, getting their bills paid, people whose biggest problem isn't Uber surge pricing, the further we get from designing problems that push the world forward, and the closer we get to declaring that our true goal is to drive towards the apocalypse in maximum comfort. It is time to stop hoping that other people will step up to solve these, or hoping that people will let us solve these and just start solving them ourselves. Recognize the power that you have to change things. Recognize the power that you have to make things happen, and also recognize that with that power comes the responsibility to do it right and to do the right thing. And remember, every single time that you as a designer make it easier and more pleasant for anyone to find and use information or tools that help people live their lives, you have contributed something important to the world. We have limited resources, whether natural, financial, or cognitive. Please don't contribute them to people wasting them on shit. Hey, number 2. Think about what you're laughing at. As a designer, you have a responsibility to uplift and uphold this craft that we share. The way you work individually affects the ability of all designers to do their jobs. Each job you do is a contribution to and a representation of the entire craft. And every time you agree to take on a job that's detrimental to the craft, or behave in a way that undermines design, you are putting the rest of us in a hole that we have to climb out of. And I can't tell you how many times I've had designers come to us looking hesitant and apprehensive, and the story is always the same. They've worked with a designer in the past who they entrusted with their project, and they've gotten let down. Now, the reasons are myriad, but the end result is the same. They feel cheated. They need us to rebuild their trust in design. Their budgets have been squandered, and they're looking for all sorts of reassurances that it's not going to happen again. And this makes my job harder, and I don't like it when my job is harder than it needs to be, and I'm sure you don't either. You benefited from all of the designers who came before you. And now is your opportunity to help your fellow designers and the designers coming after you. You are merely the present link in a chain that stretches back to the dawn of humanity and a network that expands the globe. And just like you learned from the mistakes and successes of those in the past, you need to document and share your own successes and failures for the benefit of those coming after you. Learn from those who came before and inspire those who come next. Number 3, you have a responsibility to your clients. Now, a designer cannot not have clients, whether you think you do or not. If you work internal for somebody, you still have clients. A designer is always selling something to somebody. Now, first and foremost, you have to make sure that you're choosing the right clients. People with problems that need solving, and people with problems that you have the skills to solve. You have the responsibility to do the work right, even if they're trying to talk you into doing it wrong. Don't work for anybody that you're afraid to say no to. Remember, you are not an order taker, you are not a pixel pusher, you are not a code monkey. You are a goddamn gatekeeper. Tell your client when they have a bad idea. Tell them when they ask you to work in a bad way. Tell them when they aren't giving you what you need to do your job. And then tell them what the right thing is. And then do your job. We were hired to do good design, not to make people happy. If you want your job to be making people happy, I suggest maybe taking up sandwich making. People really seem to enjoy sandwiches. And since I wrote the book, I've been getting emails from lots of designers telling me horror stories about client interactions, and the majority of them contain some form of, they make me do X. No one can make you do anything you don't want to do. No one is in charge of your actions but you. Imagine a world where a CEO and the marketing director are huddled together in a conference room sweating it out because we're never going to be able to talk the designer into making this. That is a fucking beautiful world, right? And it's within your reach. It is totally within your reach. Most clients want to do the right thing. Just they don't know they're doing the wrong thing unless you tell them. We owe it to them to tell them. That's what they hired us to do. Imagine how this plays out 3 to 6 months down the road. You've done everything that the client wanted you to do, including things that you thought were a horrible idea and totally against the goals of the project. And the project fails, and the client calls you into their office, and they say the project failed. And you say, I knew it would, but I did everything you asked me to do because I was afraid of upsetting you, and I was afraid of getting fired. Well, guess what, sport? Both of those things are about to happen anyway. So why not risk them happening while there's still a chance of solving the problem correctly, before you've blown the budget, before you've wrecked the schedule, before you've cost other people their jobs by not doing yours? If your client tells you to do something that prevents you from doing the job you were hired to do, you have to tell them. Now, I have seen designers complain incessantly about clients, but they rarely say anything to the client themselves because designers are afraid. Sometimes the best thing you can do for your client is to be willing to get fired. All of these responsibilities, though, are just part of your ultimate responsibility, your responsibility to yourself. After all, we are here to make money doing what we love to do. This isn't about altruism. This is in your own best interest. If you take responsibility for your work, you will do better work. You will enjoy it more. You will have the respect of both your clients and your colleagues, and that will ultimately lead to better opportunities as well. I realize that this is far from a perfect world, and I know that sometimes doing just enough work to pay the bills is the biggest concern. I hear you on that. But remember, that is a choice you are making. You always have a choice, and all of your personal choices have personal consequences. The work that we choose to do defines us, not just as a designer, but as a person. Your portfolio is merely a record of those choices. And if you choose to do work just to keep the lights on, consider how those choices accumulate over time. One cigarette ad in your portfolio that you did when you were 18 behind the woodshed is a youthful indiscretion. 10 cigarette ads become a love letter to the tobacco industry. And while you have a responsibility to earn your living, doing it at the expense of society's well-being makes you no better than a Wall Street banker. Anybody here a fan of Wall Street bankers? I didn't think so. Your portfolio is just another word for your reputation, which is just another word for your integrity. And every time you make a conscious choice in your profession, an intentional choice, rather than just letting things happen or accepting what is handed to you by others, a choice of problems to solve, clients to serve, or even a choice of compromise to make, you are fulfilling that responsibility to yourself. This is possible. I've taken the bad jobs. I've executed the bad feedback. I am here as a survivor of all the mistakes I'm telling you to avoid. I have made them all and more. But what I found out was that when I started saying no, the client listened. When I turned down a bad job, a better job appeared. And when I stood up for design, clients took me more seriously. And when I did the right thing and I took the good job, it led to an even better job after that. Now, when we started today, I promised you that we were going to destroy things. And I brought kerosene and I brought matches. So we're going to set something on fire. But maybe we've just been destroying the wrong things. You guys ready to blow shit up? You are not bigger than the problems you are solving. You should stand up for yourself. You should walk proud, and you should carry yourself with self-respect, but never, ever put yourself above the work. Real self-respect is tempered with the humility to understand when you are wrong and the confidence to know when you can learn from it. Your ego is nothing but fear getting in the way of solutions. Now, can we do this? Can we do this? Can we do this or not? Yes. Other people may have given up on you, but I am not going to. Can we do this? Yes. Destroy your fear. You will be wrong. There will be somebody better than you. You will not get every job, and you will fuck up some of the jobs that you do get. You will make mistakes. These things will happen. You can fully recover from them. Never trust a designer who has never been punched in the mouth. Not only have they never done anything interesting enough to piss off the right person, but they live in constant fear of what getting punched in the mouth feels like. It's really not that bad. Get over your fear of speaking up. When something is wrong, when you see a problem, it is on you to voice it. It is never not your job. You cannot keep bad design from happening if your mouth is closed. There will come a day when you will have to raise your voice, and I guarantee you that it will make a stronger sound than you ever thought possible. Can we do this? Yes. Fucking A, Bubba. Destroy your apathy. Every day, thousands of designers go to work not caring what they're going to work on next and who it affects. They just grab the next thing on their plate and they execute it without thinking. Be intentional in your actions. If you don't care what you are designing, stop designing. Maybe take up that sandwich craft we were talking about. A designer that creates things that they don't care about is like a chef that would serve you rancid food. There are other professions. Please, for the sake of all of us, find one you love. Can we do this? Yes. Destroy that art director that's hanging over your shoulder right now. Every time you let someone tell you how to do your job, you are teaching them that that is how you do your job. And I am tired of designers complaining about that and hoping that that guy would stop hovering over their shoulder but not doing anything about it. Try telling them this. Don't tell me how, tell me what. Tell me what needs improving, and let me earn my salary by figuring out how to fix it. Stop asking for permission to do the job you were hired for and act like the fucking expert people hired to do it. Can we do this? Yes. Destroy the voice inside. That voice that's telling you to accept less than what you're worth. The voice that's telling you to design with emotional approval in mind. The voice that tells you to design not what you know is right, but what you think is easier to get approved. The voice that's hoping your clients will like what you did. Who the fuck cares if they liked it? The voice telling you to avoid the difficult conversation. The voice telling you not to rock the boat. The voice telling you not to get in trouble. Designers should welcome trouble. Can we do this? Yes. And I fucking hate that I have to keep adding this slide to my talk. But whether we're talking about design tech or gaming, misogyny is rampant in this industry, and it is goddamn shameful. Almost every day I hear stories about colleagues being harassed, both in the workplace, online, or when they have the courage to get up on a stage like this. And never forget that we work in an industry where a CEO hit a woman 177 times and got a congratulatory letter from his board of directors. We are supposed to be building a better world and pointing the way to the future, and yet we cling to this bullshit and this hatred from the past. To build a better world, we have to become our best selves. We must look at all of our problems from diverse points of view. We are going to need everyone's help. And we have to give a hand up to those that we have kept down. And when we tolerate this bullshit, we are just as culpable as those who commit it. This shit stops now. Can we do it? Wake up. Be aware. Be aware of the impact you have no matter where you work. If anything, a designer working for an oil company needs to be more aware and give more of a shit than a designer working for the local food co-op. Because a designer working for a big, dangerous multinational business is in a position to do a lot more damage. So if anything, we need our best designers working at Facebook. We need our most belligerent gatekeepers working at GE. And we need our biggest assholes in a position where they can tell Rupert Murdoch to go fuck himself. Bobby Duncan needed a designer at Facebook to do the job right, and she didn't get one. Now, some of us don't work at companies where we get to choose what to work on, but you do have a choice in working for that company. You always have a choice. Just because you aren't willing to take it doesn't mean it isn't there. And even if you work for the most evil company in the world, it is still your job to evaluate everything put in front of you and decide whether you're okay having your name put on it. And you'll get fired, and yeah, you might. And getting fired does suck. I've been fired enough in my life to know that. But you can always get another job. You can always get another client. It is easier to recover from losing a job or a client than from losing your self-respect. You can always start another company. You can always have another idea. You can always get another chance. You can always dust yourself off and claim victory tomorrow. Not only can designers change the world, designers fucking have to. The fight for good design is the fight for an equal web, an open web, a more accessible web. We don't fight for the sake of design. We fight for the sake of the Bobby Duncans out there. We fight for the sake of those who need us. And we fight for the sake of those we've lost. When you decided to become a designer, you accepted the role of gatekeeper along with it. You are responsible for what you put into the world, and you are responsible for its effects on that world. Because we only have one of these. And it has always been our job to help the rest of humanity understand it, and excel within it, and farm it, and explore it, and fuck on it, and build on it, and hell, even to escape it once in a while. But most of all, it has always been our job to protect it, even if, and especially when, we have to protect it from ourselves. Thank you.